With Metal Gear Solid dead in the water, there is an ever-growing hole in the hearts of stealth-loving gamers. Who could ever fill Snake's shoes? Well, he might not be able to fill his shoes, but Sam Fisher fills out a pair of sonar goggles nicely. Today, I want to talk to you about the rise and fall of Splinter Cell, and how it's primed to rise again. But first, make sure you like this video, and while you're at it, subscribe to Nerdstalgic Gaming so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. You can't really tell the tale of Splinter Cell without also mentioning Metal Gear. The MGS series popularized and perfected the stealth action subgenre thanks to its creator and living legend Hideo Kojima, which is why game designer Clint Hocking was clear about its influence on the Splinter Cell series, going as far as to say, Metal Gear is a stealth action game. Every game that has ever used that idea owes its existence to the success of Metal Gear. It's fairly obvious that Ubisoft saw the success of MGS and wanted in on the action, but Hocking was still being modest here. While the entire stealth action subgenre may have built on the back of Metal Gear, Splinter Cell wasn't content to be carried. When Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell was released on an Xbox exclusive from Ubisoft in 2002, it recontextualized what a stealth game could be. The game is gorgeous, the animation and game models were all stunning, and 2002 gamers had never seen nicer lighting. Seeing a dim interior light cast a long shadow down a hallway or diffuse a bright light through window shades was a pretty novel concept 20 years ago. And the lighting effects aren't just pretty to look at, you really make use of them by lurking in dark corners and avoiding the brighter areas of the map. The developers definitely doubled down on the stealth part. Playing as the series protagonist, Sam Fisher, really feels like you are an ex-CIA, ex-Navy SEAL operative coming back for one last job. Since Splinter Cell doesn't have any real upgrade or level system, and instead drops players into a map with a set list of gear, you're forced to think like a true spy. You've got to really observe the environment you're in, take stock of the tools at your disposal, and get in and out with the least possible resistance. And Splinter Cell is much more serious in its approach than Metal Gear has ever been. The tone of the story remains consistent, taking obvious inspiration from the military science and espionage novels created by the game's namesake. It's grounded in reality, which was a breath of fresh air for some gamers after playing the often cartoony Metal Gear 1 and 2. And of course, Michael Ironside voicing Sam Fisher was maybe the best decision made during the game's development.
Don't tell me. 3 alarms and the mission is over?
Of course not. This is no video game, Fisher.
He brought the perfect amount of tired, cynical, been-there-done-it-all vibes to the role. All of this was enough to launch Splinter Cell into subgenre stardom. It was meeting and surpassing Metal Gear sales and award nominations. Splinter Cell became something much bigger than a love letter to the MGS series. Now, it was its competition. And Splinter Cell had won the first prize. This initial massive hit means the devs immediately went to work on creating sequels. Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow came out in 2004 to similar fanfare, which is fitting since it was very similar to the first game, with the main addition being the new online mode, which was good. But what else came out in 2004? Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. This was the first time that Splinter Cell and MGS released games in the same year, and Splinter Cell couldn't quite match up. It was a few frustrating steps behind in terms of critic scores and sales. A big reason for why it was so difficult to top Metal Gear is Hideo Kojima. As a true video game auteur, Kojima prioritized the art of making video games over what was profitable or marketable. As long as his name was attached, Metal Gear would continue to be a worthy opponent. But while Metal Gear won this battle, the war wasn't over. 3 must be a lucky number because the third Splinter Cell game is widely considered the best in the series. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory came out in 2005, and it looked better, played better, and offered more content than any of the previous games, including any Metal Gear games. Once again, it was highly reviewed and sold 2.5 million copies in just a couple of weeks. Splinter Cell was on the rise. But Metal Gear also had a release in 2005. Metal Gear Acid 2. Yeah, Konami decided to release a sequel to its Metal Gear-themed card game in 2005. It isn't a bad game, but it certainly wasn't enough to go toe-to-toe with a proper new installment to the Splinter Cell series. So, Splinter Cell came out on top. With 3 incredible games under their belt, all directed by Clint Hocking, Ubisoft's attempt to piggyback off Metal Gear's success had clearly worked out. Metal Gear was shaping up to be a franchise with major staying power. Or so we thought. As the years went on and Metal Gear and Splinter Cell continued to vie for the attention of the gaming community, the fierce competition fizzled out into a sad, one-sided takeover. When the gaming industry moved closer and into the 2010s, developers were pushing to modernize. They did this by looking at their highest-grossing franchises of all time. It just so happens that one of Konami's highest-grossing franchises was Metal Gear, so they just kept making them. But Ubisoft? Their sales pointed in a different direction. The Assassin's Creed and Far Cry games were among the company's best-selling franchises, and even other Tom Clancy games were outperforming the beloved Splinter Cell. This seemed to tell Ubisoft that it was time to make some big changes. Director Clint Hocking was moved off the series to instead work on Far Cry 2, leaving Splinter Cell mostly to the will of Ubisoft executives. Thus, 2006's Double Agent, 2010's Conviction, and 2013's Blacklist were all technically Splinter Cell games, but none of them felt like it. With each new release, these pure stealth action games fell further into the action-adventure category. It doesn't seem like a big change language-wise, but it's a very important distinction. Given everything we know about Splinter Cell as a series, that was never going to work. While they never had the gall to go full Far Cry on us, Conviction is perhaps the worst example of this trend. It made Sam Fisher into a full-on action hero and sidelined stealth altogether. Blacklist made an attempt to mend this, but the loss of Michael Ironside's iconic voice made Sam Fisher's character significantly weaker.
Not much of a welcome party.
And the devs simply didn't do enough course correction for fans. This is likely why Splinter Cell Blacklist underperformed sales-wise, which resulted in Ubisoft quietly shelving the IP and shifting focus to other titles. They withdrew from their competition with Metal Gear, not with a bang, not a whimper, but a completely silent retreat. The frustrating part is that Blacklist's underperformance meant it sold 2 million copies instead of the expected 5 million, and that was enough for Ubisoft to sink the series. It's not like those games are terrible, but the decisions made by higher-ups and a lack of direction from Clint Hocking made Splinter Cell a shell of its former self. Meanwhile, Konami was doubling down on what made Metal Gear so great, while still experimenting and innovating thanks to designer Hideo Kojima. And that innovation resulted in Metal Gear 5, The Phantom Pain, which won a ridiculous amount of awards, shipped 3 million copies within 5 days of release, and was all anyone could talk about for at least a year. Splinter Cell was all but forgotten. The only remnants of the series lived on in other properties, with Sam Fisher showing up in Rainbow Six Siege, the same year Phantom Pain came out. The competition had a clear winner. MGS took the crown of King of Stealth Action franchises. But in a strange twist of fate, Phantom Pain, the Splinter Cell killer, also provided the franchise with an unexpected opportunity. Phantom Pain was the last MGS game Hideo Kojima would work on, which effectively ended the series. There's only been one other Metal Gear game since Kojima's departure, and everyone hated it. So the stealth action genre has been experiencing a dry spell without any new Metal Gear games to quench the thirst of fans. Maybe the whole subgenre is just too dated to be revived. Maybe it's not profitable enough to go into. Maybe it's dead for good.
I'm already dead.
Or maybe it's time for Sam Fisher to come out of retirement again. In January of 2021, Ubisoft announced that they were making a VR Splinter Cell game, and in December of 2021, they dropped an even bigger bomb. The original Splinter Cell from 2002 is going to be remade. Now, remakes and remasters are nice. Modern remakes can do great things for a franchise. But it's not like we're gonna be getting a completely new Splinter Cell experience, right? Well, maybe if the remakes fill enough of Scrooge McDuck's money vaults, it would prove to Ubisoft that there is a market for stealth action games, and that Splinter Cell is the perfect candidate to reinvigorate the subgenre. And after hopping between companies, Clint Hocking is officially back at Ubisoft, so he could realistically jump back in as a director. Ubisoft knows how much people adored the original games. They wouldn't have put Sam Fisher in Rainbow Six Siege and in 2019's Ghost Recon Breakpoint if he wasn't such an iconic character. And they've closely guarded the brand's integrity since 2013, not releasing any subpar spin-offs or mobile money grabs. So with their biggest competition finally out of the way and the original director poised to bring the series back to basics, there's no better time for Splinter Cell to rise again. And that's all we have for you today. Thanks for watching, and make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments, are you excited for the Splinter Cell remake? See y'all in the next one.